Beyond these quiet California hills, there once stood a place that looked like a dream drawn by a child. A private train chugging past a Ferris wheel, a carousel frozen in candy-colored lights, bronze statues of children at play, and, at the center, a mansion that belonged to the most famous pop star on Earth. This was Neverland Ranch. To some, it was Michael Jackson's sanctuary, a refuge built by a man who never had a normal childhood, now determined to create one for himself and for the children he invited through these gates. To others, it was something far darker, a stage 4 manipulation, secrecy, and accusations that would haunt his name forever. Inside Neverland, what really happened behind closed gates. Tonight, we step beyond the tabloid headlines and fan fantasies. We're going to walk, room by room, through the story of this controversial estate, using court documents, news reports, sworn testimonies, interviews, and first-hand accounts gathered over decades. We'll revisit the 1993 investigation that shocked the world, the dramatic 2005 trial that ended in acquittal, and the explosive claims that resurfaced years after Michael's death, dividing fans, journalists, and even legal experts. But we'll also listen to the other side. The workers who said they saw nothing but kindness, the children who remember only innocent wonder, and the close friends who insist the accusations were part of a larger story about fame, money, and the power of rumor. Was Neverland a symbol of generosity and lost innocence, or a carefully constructed foucault hiding uncomfortable truths? As you watch, ask yourself, who do you believe? How do we separate facts from legend when the main character can no longer speak for himself? And why, after all these years, does the mystery of Neverland still cling to Michael Jackson's legacy like a shadow? Stay with us as we open the gates, sift through the evidence, and explore not just what people say happened here, but what those stories reveal about celebrity, trust, and our own need to either protect or destroy the icons we create. This is not a fan tribute. This is not a hit piece. This is a journey into one of the most debated places in modern pop culture. Inside Neverland. Behind closed gates, where the music stopped, but the questions never did. To understand Neverland, we have to begin long before these gates were built. Michael Jackson grew up on the road, while most children were learning to ride bikes and play in schoolyards. Michael was memorizing choreography, facing blinding stage lights, and living under the relentless pressure of a father determined to make his sons stars. Former bandmates and biographers describe a childhood of rehearsals, hotel rooms, and interviews, with little time for privacy and even less for being a kid. For many who knew him, Neverland was the physical answer to a psychological wound. In 1987, Michael discovered a sprawling property in Los Olivos, California, then known as Sycamore Valley Ranch. He had visited it years earlier while filming the Say 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 music video with Paul McCartney. The estate captivated him. On March 19, 1988, Michael completed the purchase for approximately $17 million. Over time, he transformed the 2,700-acre ranch into his fantasy world, renaming it Neverland, after the magical island. In Peter Pan, there was an amusement park with a Ferris wheel, bumper cars, a carousel, a private zoo with elephants, giraffes, and chimpanzees, a movie theater, and a miniature railroad looping through the grounds. Former staff members recall the rules: candy and popcorn for guests, movie nights, fireworks, and an open invitation for sick and underprivileged children to visit from hospitals and charities. Buses would arrive, and for a day, those children stepped into what looked like a private Disneyland. On camera, Michael called Neverland a place of love, laughter, and healing. He said he saw himself as Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up, and the ranch took its name from that very myth. For many visitors, that's exactly what it felt like. Some recalled him as gentle, shy, and almost childlike. They described running through the grounds, playing arcade games, feeding animals, and leaving with memories of a kind host, not a global superstar. But even in its earliest years, Neverland drew criticism. Journalists questioned why a grown man spent so much time with children, why sleepovers happened, and why the lines between celebrity, philanthropy, and intimacy seemed so blurred. Michael's defenders argued that this was media sensationalism, that a traumatized former child star was being punished for his eccentricity and generosity. Still, as the legend of Neverland grew, so did its contradictions. Security staff managed guest lists, monitored who came and went, and ensured the estate's privacy. From the outside, the ranch seemed impenetrable, a world unto itself, shielded from paparazzi and prying eyes. Inside, according to some former employees, there were areas few people accessed, doors that stayed locked, and routines that revolved entirely around Michael's presence and moods. To his fans, these layers of privacy were necessary. After all, Michael had become one of the most famous people on the planet. To his critics, that same isolation created the perfect environment for something darker to happen if the accusations that would soon surface were true. By the early 1990s, Neverland had become more than just a home. It was a global symbol. Music videos, magazine spreads, and TV interviews highlighted the ranch as an extension of Michael's persona, magical, strange, childlike, and unreachable. The stage was set. What the world did not know yet was that this fairytale kingdom would soon be at the center of one of the most explosive scandals in entertainment history. A scandal that would forever rewrite how people looked at those iron gates, the amusement rides, and the man who built them. In 1993, the dream of Neverland collided with a nightmare. That summer, a 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler accused Michael Jackson of sexual abuse. The allegations, reported by major news outlets around the world, claimed that inappropriate behavior had taken place at Neverland and other locations. For the first time, the ranch was not just a curiosity, it was a crime scene in the public imagination. Law enforcement launched an investigation. Police searched Neverland, looking for evidence to support or refute the claims. The media frenzy was immediate and relentless. Late-night jokes, tabloid covers, and endless televised debates transformed Michael Jackson from an untouchable icon into a deeply controversial figure almost overnight. Michael denied the allegations, calling them lies and extortion. He insisted that his relationships with children were based on shared innocence, not abuse. For him, sleepovers were an expression of trust and friendship, not something sinister. In January 1994, the Chandler case was settled civilly. The total settlement was reported to be approximately $23 million, with over $15 million placed in a trust fund for Jordan Chandler and additional payments to his parents and their attorneys. The criminal investigation ended without charges being filed. Supporters said the settlement was a way to stop a damaging media circus and allow Michael to move on with his life and career. Critics argued that paying money instead of going to trial left questions unanswered and suspicions unresolved. For a while, Neverland tried to return to its role as a private sanctuary and playground, but the shadow of 1993 never fully disappeared. A decade later, in 2003, that shadow returned in full force, following a documentary by British journalist Martin Bashir titled Living with Michael Jackson, in which Michael was shown holding hands with a young cancer patient and speaking openly about sharing his bedroom with children. Public concern and media scrutiny Soon after, a new accuser, a boy named Gavin Arvizo, came forward, alleging that he had been abused at Neverland. This time, police raids were dramatic and heavily televised. Dozens of officers swept through the estate. Images of law enforcement vehicles lining the drive, of the main house and outbuildings being searched, became iconic. Neverland was once again at the center of a global storm. In 2005, Michael Jackson went to trial, charged with 10 counts related to child molestation, conspiracy, and providing alcohol to a minor. The courtroom became the new stage for the Neverland story. Prosecutors painted a picture of the ranch as a place designed to groom and manipulate vulnerable children. They described alcohol, gifts, and special privileges as tools of control. The defense, however, told a different story. They argued that Neverland was a place of generosity and escape, that families were always around, and that the Arvizo family had financial motives and credibility problems. They highlighted inconsistencies in testimonies and brought forward witnesses who said they had seen nothing inappropriate over years of working and staying at the ranch. Around the world, People took sides. Some were convinced Michael was a victim of lies driven by greed and the hunger for another scandal. Others believed the accounts of alleged victims, seeing patterns and warning signs in his behavior that had been ignored or excused for too long. After a highly publicized trial, on June 13, 2005, the jury reached its verdict. Michael Jackson was acquitted on all 10 counts, including lesser charges. Legally, he walked free and was presumed innocent of the crimes alleged. But the trial left deep scars. For many, the acquittal did not fully erase doubts. For others, it was proof that he had been unjustly targeted and that Neverland had been misrepresented by sensationalist media and opportunistic accusers. What was certain is that the trial changed Neverland forever. The ranch, once marketed as a place of joy, was now bound in the public mind to allegations, raids, and courtroom drama. Michael would never live there in the same way again. The magic people once saw in Neverland was now inseparable from the darkness others believed had always been there, waiting behind closed doors. After the 2005 trial, Neverland was no longer the bustling playground it had been. The rides slowed and stopped. Many members of the staff were let go. The zoo animals were relocated. What had once been filled with children's laughter, fireworks, and music now stood quiet, a costly reminder of both Michael's grandest dreams and his most painful battles. Financial pressures mounted. Reports described mounting debts and legal costs. In 2008, the ranch narrowly avoided a public auction when Colony Capital, an investment firm, stepped in. Over time, Neverland changed hands and changed names, eventually marketed again as Sycamore Valley Ranch, but the original identity was impossible to fully shake. In December 2020, the property was sold to billionaire Ron Burkell for approximately $22 million, a fraction of what it had once been worth. Michael himself never returned to live there after the trial. Friends and associates said the magic was gone for him. The place where he'd tried to reclaim his lost childhood had become the symbol of his greatest humiliation. For a man obsessed with image and fantasy, the fall of Neverland represented more than a financial issue. It was an emotional exile. In June 2009, the world received shocking news. Michael Jackson had died in Los Angeles at the age of 50. Global mourning followed. Fans gathered outside Neverland's gates, leaving flowers, photos, and notes. The ranch, now empty of its owner, became a shrine of sorts, a physical reminder of the brilliance and tragedy of his life. But the controversy did not end with his death. In the years that followed, new allegations and documentaries revived the debate. Most notably, the 2019 film Leaving Neverland, directed by Dan Reed, focused on the accounts of Wade Robson and James Safechuck, two men who claimed they had been abused by Michael as children, often at Neverland. Their stories were graphic, emotional, and detailed. Michael's estate, along with many of his fans, and some family members, strongly denied these new claims, pointing to earlier sworn testimonies in which both men had defended Michael in court and highlighting what they called inconsistencies and financial motives. They accused the filmmakers and accusers of seeking money and attention. Supporters emphasized that Michael had been previously investigated and acquitted, arguing that revisiting the allegations without cross-examination in court was fundamentally unfair. But for others, the documentary reinforced what they had long suspected or feared. The seemingly endless stream of testimonials and emotional interviews convinced them that Neverland had never been the innocent playground Michael described. And so, a deep divide solidified. On one side, devoted fans and some former associates insist that Neverland was a misunderstood sanctuary. Vilified by a ruthless media ecosystem that profits from scandal, they highlight stories of sick children whose days at the ranch were among the happiest of their lives, of charities helped, of moments of genuine empathy and kindness. On the other side, critics, some journalists, and alleged victims view Neverland as an example of how power, wealth, and fame can shield troubling behaviors for years. For them, the fairy tale setting was precisely what made the allegations so disturbing. A fantasyland built, in part, to disarm suspicion. Today, the physical Neverland is a largely private property. Its rides removed or left unused, its pathways empty, yet in public memory it is more alive than ever, a symbol constantly revisited in documentaries, podcasts, opinion pieces, and fan debates. If you stand at those gates now, the silence is striking. No music, no crowds, no lights, only metal, stone, and the history we project onto them. So what really happened behind closed gates? The truth, as far as we can know it, exists in a tangled web of sworn testimonies, legal outcomes, personal memories, and media narratives. The law cleared Michael Jackson of criminal charges in life. After his death, new claims and shifting cultural attitudes about abuse and power have caused many to re-examine his legacy. For some, he remains the king of pop, a wounded soul who created Neverland to escape a harsh reality, unjustly attacked and misunderstood. For others, he is an example of how celebrity can complicate our willingness to confront difficult allegations, especially when they clash with the art and memories we cherish. Neverland, in the end, reflects more than Michael Jackson. It reflects our desire for heroes, our resistance to seeing their flaws, our hunger for scandal, and our struggle to navigate stories where innocence and accusation, joy and pain, fantasy and fear all occupy the same space. Standing here now, with the gates closed and the music gone, we are left with questions and the responsibility to decide what we believe and why. You've now walked through the rise and fall of Neverland, from childhood fantasy to global scandal, from a house full of laughter to a silent monument of unanswered questions. But this story doesn't end with a verdict, a documentary, or even with Michael Jackson's death. It continues in conversations like this one, and in how each of us chooses to interpret the evidence, the testimonies, and the emotions attached to his music and his memory. Now, it's your turn. What do you think Neverland really was? A misunderstood sanctuary created by a damaged but generous artist, a carefully constructed stage hiding darker realities, or something in between, a place where good intentions, pain, and poor boundaries collided under the harshest spotlight in the world? Tell us in the comments. Do you feel the media treated Michael fairly? Or do you believe the coverage was distorted by sensationalism and profit? How did the allegations, the trial, and later documentaries change the way you see him, if at all? Share your perspective, your doubts, your experiences with his music, and what Neverland symbolizes to you today. If you want more deep, documentary-style explorations like this, where we go beyond headlines and fan theories to examine the full, complicated story, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss our next investigation into the places, people, and myths that shaped modern pop culture. This conversation doesn't belong to one side or the other. It belongs to all of us. Comment below, and let's talk about what really happened inside